Hey folks, good morning. Again, my dog thinks I'm talking to her. Settle down, Izzy. Let's see. Today is going to be a little bit of an exercise in color mixing because I'm a little lost. These colors are so much brighter than the typical portraits that I do. So a couple things. I'm going to add a color to my palette. Raw umber. Let's see. What is an easy way to do that? So I'm going to do a few things. I'm going to add a raw umber to my palette. It's probably too late for this portrait. But just to get those darker browns, that's kind of why I want that. Raw umber is pretty close to black. So like the whole left side of her hair, it's got a lot of brown in it, so I want to add that. And then we're going to do a color mixing exercise. As soon as I get my glove on, I'll talk about more. And I also realized I walked down here without my coffee, so I need to go get that too. But let's get set up first. Oh, and then the other thing too is I'm going to add, I mentioned yesterday I was going to add an alkyd to my paint so that it would, since I'm painting every day, I kind of want it to dry every day so that when I come in the morning or whenever my next session is, that I've got a nice dry painting to work on. And so the alkyd I'm going to add is Galkyd Light. And I'm just going to add it to my medium. My medium, it's time to fill it up, looks like. So I'm just going to drop maybe a tablespoon or so of Galkyd Light in there. And maybe a little bit on my palette just by itself. You don't need a lot. But yeah, if you haven't used an alkyd before, there's a few different kinds. I should probably try to get this lid off first. Did I get it? I got it. So two things with Galkyds. Yeah, two things with Galkyds, why I don't use them that often, and now I gotta go open a door, is there is a chemical smell to them. Hang on one second, I'm gonna open my door. So there's a chemical smell to them. There should be a warning to all that you need some ventilation. So I've got my sliding door behind me, so I'm going to open that up. It's a little cold. It's got to be like 8 in the morning here. What is it? 8:30 in the morning. So if you use a Galkyd, use ventilation. There's a bunch of different kinds. Probably, I don't have any on me, but Gamblin makes a solvent-free gel that's got an alkyd in it, and it's not a lot, but it's just enough to where where it'll by the next day your painting will be pretty close to dry. So that's a good one, good solvent-free, safe one. My problem is I always give my tube away, and now I don't have a tube of it, so Galkyd Light is kind of my next option. Let me go get my coffee real quick. 2 seconds. It looks like I didn't bring my coffee down because my coffee was empty. So I'm making a pot real quick, or a cup real quick. So anyways, I'm going to add some Galkyd to my medium. let's do that. I'll get the lid off. Don't need to add too much. That's a little thick for me, so I'm going to add some Gamsol back in there. Maybe I shall put this behind my painting. So yeah, let's add some Gamsol in there. I brought mine down expecting this. Boy, everything is fighting me today. Probably enough. I think Winsor Newton also makes a white with Galkyd in it. And that's another option as well, because pretty much I think that's what David Gray does. I think his white, he uses Galkyd white. All right, my coffee's ready. I'm gonna run upstairs real quick and get it. All right, I'm back with you. Nice hot cup of coffee. Okay. Set that over here. Let's just keep this handy for now. Let's not use it just yet. And yeah, I went the whole spiel about Evan Graham paints. I was painting so much at home and I was doing larger formats that I started buying this Blick paint. It's kind of student grade, but I can't tell the difference. And it's crazy cheap. I think these 40 milliliter tubes are like $5 a piece. So that's a good option too if you're a student or if you just want to try it. So one of the best Bay Area painters I know, that's all he uses is Blick color. So good enough for him. It's good enough for me. I almost said us, but good enough for me for sure. All right, so the color mixing exercise. I haven't figured out how I want to display this yet, but I mentioned that I'm having trouble with determining colors from my iPad and the reference image. And so what I've done is, part of the reason is the iPad, just because it's backlit, and so the color is quite a bit different. So if you look, and I've got a really good printer, and if you look, the color is quite a bit different than, well, you can't see my iPad, but the color is a bit different. And so what I've done, and I've done this in the past, is I use Snagit. And so what I've done is, I made a way that I could show you as well. Let me pull this up here. There we go. What I've done is I've taken my Snagit tool and a good image of my subject, Allie in this case. It's weird calling her a subject, but the subject in this case. And it's time consuming, but it's valuable once in a while. I basically used the dropper tool and I've pulled out samples of probably way too many colors. I really just wanted to initially get kind of the colors of her face, along the side here. I was struggling with that, and then that really bright area over here. But I'm a little OCD, and once I got started, I kind of went around the clock of her face and grabbed some colors that I thought might be a fun exercise to try to recreate with you guys. So I think what we'll do is we'll start with some. We'll just do a color mixing exercise, and then as we're doing it, I'll kind of explain what I'm doing. But I think that'll be fun for this session, invaluable for me because I am kind of lost on those colors. They're all just so light, and the range for me, the value range is so narrow that I'm having trouble mixing it. So why don't we try this out? So let me get rid of this. And granted, I know that not everybody can pay for software like Snagit or or has a really nice printer, but I think this is worth a couple times a year. I mean, if you're going to spend, I'm trying to say this in a PC way, if you're going to spend, hours making a portrait, I think it's a valuable exercise to once in a while, doesn't have to be every time, but once in a while to to do this exercise. What I'm struggling with is how to show you guys what I'm gonna do. So I think the first thing I want to do is just as a warm up, I want to do some easy colors. So I'm thinking under her eye here. So that's this color. What's the easiest way to show you? So that's this color here that we're going to do. And so that's kind of this purple. And then so what you do, the exercise, is you mix a color, mix a color, mix a color, and then you can test it against, you just put a little drop on the photo, and when you'll know that you got the color right because the paint will disappear into the background color. So why don't we try that? So again, we're going to do this color here, which is kind of the shadow under her eye. Let me see. Yeah, why don't we spend some time and do it just like this? Give me a second. I'm gonna grab. We're gonna take this to the board. One second, I've got some tape right here. Let's tape it to a whiteboard. Oh. not going anywhere. All right. There we go. This doesn't need to go here. I'm going to knock that off. All right. So we are going to do this color here above her, below her eye, between her eye and between this kind of rosy spot here. So to me, that color looks a little purple. So I'm going to start with white. These are all white colors. And we're going to go with red and blue. What makes, so it also looks a little purpley to me. So then you just take it and you drop it up here. And I need to use more paint. And then so you can see how much lighter I am than what the actual color is. But I think I got the color right. It's just needs to be darker. So we'll put some more red in there. We'll basically make it more purpley. So that I could already tell. And this is the problem, is I always make these too dark, but let's try it. So now we're too dark. So I'm going to grab a paper towel. And I should be able to wipe that off. So not as good as I'd hoped, but so let's go a little bit lighter. And that is just perfect. So as purple as that is, that's the color we want. So I'm going to wipe that off. And so let's see, how did we do on our painting? So again, we're under her eye right about here. We didn't do very good, did we? That's kind of fun, right? It's weird how out of context how different colors are. All right, so we've got that one. That was easy enough. And that's what you'll find is the colors are easy enough to paint or to mix, but it's just your eye is off. All right, so let's try another one. Let's do, so let's go down her face a little bit into kind of this blushy area here. So this one here, where you can see it's a little bit red. So I guess we'll start at, what is this, 2 o'clock, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock. I don't quite have it like a clock, but why don't we do it like this, and we'll hit that kind of, that blush color. She's got two different blush colors, so it's here and here. And that's a thing to think of too, or to keep in mind. The shadow side of the face, even though it's kind of the same general area, the color will be different, right? So on the lighter side of the face, it's a little more, a little more orangey, a little lighter. So let's try to mix that. First, let's have some coffee. All right. And maybe, why don't we start from scratch each time? So each time I'll wipe up this color and we'll just start from the beginning. Normally what I would do is kind of work from the same pile. But why don't we start from scratch and talk about it? And this, you guys should definitely do along. It doesn't have to be, well, I didn't give you much warning, but if you're watching the VOD of this, I would pause it, print out a picture, and try to do the same. You don't have to make these swatches or whatever. You could do it right on the photo. Something that I try to do that didn't work out for me is I do have access to a lamination machine, and I laminated a couple versions of these, and it unfortunately that thin layer of lamination makes the color change about a stop, and it also kind of grays it a little bit. So the lamination, that cellophane or whatever that plastic is over, that lamination layer just changes the color too much, and it really changes the contrast too. So all right, so we're going to do this color here to me. So the first thing I do is I'm like, well, what is that? I mean, it's kind of a light red, and it's got a little bit of orange in there. So a light red and a little bit of yellow, but it's also a little bit brown. So we got to add some blue in there. So let's try it. So we'll go, to me, it's a little bit red, right? It's orangey. So I'm going to skip. Normally I would throw golden ochre or yellow ochre in there, but let's just try it with yellow, right? So this is going to orange it up a little bit more. Remember that cad red is pretty powerful. That might be a little too orangey, so let's get some blue in there. And that's going to brown it up. So let's take a look at this. This looks really saturated to me, but just to kind of see where we're at, let's take a little dollop and put it on here. So a couple things jump out at me. It's way too dark, right? So let's lighten it up with some white. And when I lighten it up with white, I kind of see that it needs to be a little redder. So let's just grab just a little bit of that. And of course that increases the saturation a little bit, so let's put some blue back in there. Now let's see how we're doing. Again, still too dark. Probably grabbed too much white. problem with color mixing too is the color does look different when you've got your palette at a different angle in a different spot than your canvas or panel. Let's try that. Ooh. How's that look to you guys? So that is pretty close. I would say you guys can't quite see it on the camera, but it's maybe a little light. I think it could be just a little darker and maybe a little bluer. So let's go in the center here and grab this. Let's try that. And that is pretty close. I think that is close enough. So let's see how we did on our panel. So again, that's this color around the nose. And I don't think we're that far off there. Yeah, we're not that far off. Not that far off. It's kind of this way though. All right. And then there's obviously between here and here, there's kind of a transition color. And so what I would probably do is I'd do a mix of these two colors to kind of make that transition work. All right, so 2 down. All right, now let's do that kind of shadow in that little crease of her nose. So we talked about it earlier, that's going to be redder. So anywhere there's a crease or a wrinkle, it's typically redder because that's where the skin is thinner. And so you can see the blood vessels. Ooh, I dropped a whole bunch of blue there somehow. All right. I don't have my palette knife. It'd probably be better to use a palette knife than your brush. The reason people use palette knives, I think at some point it just gets easier to mix colors with a palette knife, but it's not so hard on your brushes. This kind of, you're basically just wearing down your brush if you use it to mix colors. I have this palette knife. Maybe we'll try it. It's too big for me. But why don't we try it? So we're going to do this crease now. So here, and then that's kind of obviously redder, darker. So again, we'll start with the red. And this is darker, so I won't start with white, but I'll get a little bit of white in there. And then, again, blue. It's obviously too dark. Let's get some white in there. Yeah, that's too much blue versus the red. So let's get some more red in there. just hold it up there. So without even dabbing it on there, that's pretty close, pretty close. I think maybe a little bit lighter. So this isn't an exercise of being able to mix colors, I don't think. It's more of an exercise for me on being able to judge colors. So that's pretty close. Put a little bit on there. Probably a little dark and a little bit blue. So let's add some more white. No. So that lightened it up, but we got to get some red back in there. I really want to use that alizarin crimson. I know that would get us close really fast, but I'm trying to just use the primaries. So now we went a little bit too white. You guys can see that. But I think it's lighter, and so it needs to be darker and needs to be redder. So the red is darker, so that's just naturally going to make it darker. Let's see how we did. That's looking pretty good. Let's put a little dollop on there. A little bit too light still. So, I always have, well, let's see. I'm going to do what I said, and I'm going to stick with my limited palette. I was going to say I always have transparent red oxide on my panel or on my palette, so I was going to dip into that. But let's see how good we could do with just the primaries in the limited palette. That is looking pretty close to me. All right, I'm gonna go with that. So let's see how we did. Oh, I guess I should have taken a little bit of this. Put some of that on here. So we're obviously, I don't think we got to it yet, so I'm not going to be too hard on myself, but I think we could have done a little better job there. It's quite a bit darker than what we had. All right. So I'm really interested now in this color. This is a color here that started this whole thing. And I know it's white, but let's just do, let's take a look at what white is. So let's clean this up. If I was smart, I would just make another pile with these colors, so I don't have to subject you guys to this all over again. So this white, so let's see, I better squeeze out some more white. 1 second. Just reaching behind me and getting my bag of paint. This is getting kind of messy and yucky, so let's just clean this up. Ugh. white gets a, a double squeeze because that's what I use more than any other color. So, so let's take a little bit of this and hold it up here. So see how much brighter that is? So even though this looks white, so it's also kind of a peachy color. So it's a little orangey and a little darker. So that's where I get into trouble. So let's grab some yellow. Let's grab some red. So the first thing, I guess I didn't go through order of operations, but when I'm mixing colors, the first thing I do is I try to get the color. And then I'll lighten it and darken it as needed. Lightening and darkening doesn't necessarily always mean adding white. I'd actually prefer to do another color if that gets me closer to the target color. I'd rather, to lighten it up, I'd rather use like a yellow or a golden ochre or something that's already mixed on my palette. But sometimes like this, where it's so white, you really have no choice but to add white. So I think I've got the color. It's kind of a, like I said, a little peach color, but it just needs to be lighter. And I think it needs to be yellower too. So let's grab some more yellow. Problem is all of my colors are too powerful. Well, let's take a second to think about that. So again, I'm in the ballpark, but it's just too dark. And I've kind of got conflicting, this is the problem with the iPad, so let me show you on my iPad. The color versus what camera. So see if I can move this. So I guess there's not much value in showing you that because it's just like the image that I have. So let's change that back. I was going to say the problem is the photograph is more yellow than the photograph is more pink than the printed photograph is more pink than the backlit image on the iPad. But that's why we're doing this from a photo. So what I need to do is turn off my iPad and quit looking at it and then just go off this photo. So how are we doing here? So I think it still needs to be a little bit lighter. Let's see, how can I show you? Yeah. Well, let me put it on there. So yeah, a little bit lighter. Let's do it. Yeah, it's still whiter. So I'm going to use this brush to put it on. Yeah, so I was so close that I didn't trust that I was actually putting paint on the photograph. So that's when you know you've got it, is when you put the paint on the swatch and you can't see it. So that's perfect. And let's just check again. Let's see how close to white that is. So let me find this dark spot here. So this is the color, our target color. And let's grab some titanium white. Clean our brush off. Get right into the clean spot there. And let's just go right on top. So see how much brighter and whiter titanium white is? Let me put some titanium white in that swatch too. Yeah. So crazy, right? Looks white to me, but it's obviously a little darker. All right. So that took a while. So you could see we went all the way from this all the way down to this. And I mean, this is a painting, right? This is something that's going to last, possibly hundreds of years. So I don't do it all the time. I don't do it. I mean, it's probably been a year since I've done it last, but I think spending a half hour and going through this exercise, is worth it. And then, so normally what I would do, and I'll do this, I guess, the next time we paint, is I would mix enough of that color to where I could use it later. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to work on kind of this side of the face for the next session, and I'm going to mix these colors. And I figured we'd kill the hour, just going around. I'd like to do her lipstick colors. I'd like to do the pinks. Let's get the shadow color. Let's do the greens of her eyes. And let's do her eyes. And then maybe that'll end it for the session for today. But yeah, let's do that. So let's clean up our mess. Again, I would start, I wouldn't start from, I'm not going to start from scratch when I'm actually mixing these colors from my painting. We forgot to test to see how close we were on the actual painting, but that's fine. But I wouldn't start from, I'm not going to start from scratch when I'm mixing colors to actually paint this thing. So next, let's do the pink of her. There's two kind of main colors that I see in her lips. Well, there's three, right? There's the light side, there's the dark side of her lips, and then there's the line of her, where her top lip touches her bottom lip, basically the crease where the two lips meet. There's a quite a bit darker color. But that's usually easy. You know, I would probably start with a transparent red oxide, and then I'd probably use alizarin crimson to make the crease where the lips meet, and then, you know, this area over here, that's a little more alizarin crimson than I think the center of the lips. But let's do the light. So let's do this kind of pink color here, and that's the light side of her lips. So again, this is a lighter color, so I'd probably start with white, and then I'd go right in with the CAD red light. And this one's going to be easy. I think that's pretty close as it is, but let's take a look. So I think I got lucky and made that color first shot out of the box. Yeah. Just testing real quick to make sure I'm even laying down some paint. Let's get some more paint out there. So we got lucky with that one. It's basically pure white and pure CAD red light. I guess we kind of knew that. So I'm going to clean up this, and I'll clean my brush. Well, I keep forgetting to test the color against my painting, but all right, so let's do the dark side of the lips now. So that's this section here, and that's this swatch. So this one, I mean, to me, that is literally, let's test it. To me, that's straight out of the tube alizarin crimson. So alizarin crimson out of the tube is a little bit dark, but let's just, I think if you're a portrait painter, you kind of have to have alizarin crimson in your palette, but we'll do it both ways. So we'll lighten up alizarin crimson. And so that's exactly what it is. It's just a alizarin crimson and a little bit of titanium white. But for your guys' sake, let's see if we can mix that. So alizarin crimson is just kind of a cool CAD red, or a cool red. So that's CAD red light. So CAD red light to me is a little orangey, and I think that's why I like it for skin tones. Is most of our skin tones are closer to orange than they are red. So what would I do to make that more cool and dark is I would add a blue. So of course that made it brown. So let's get some more red in there. Blue. I'm just curious what happens if we put some yellow in there. And it may not be possible to make that color with the colors that I have. The more blue I add, the more the more darker it gets. So and I think if it was a natural color, we'd probably be closer, but she's obviously wearing lipstick, so I'm gonna say this is a color that I can't make. I can't mix this color. with the colors that I have. We can't even get close. So this is a case where, you know, where a model has lipstick, sometimes you can't make that color. You can get close, but I can't make that color without alizarin crimson. But at least now I know, right? Now I don't have to sit here trying to mix that color all day and ultimately give up. All right, so that's it for the lips. So we could do the light side of the lips, but not the dark side. I don't want to give up. Yeah. Let's try it again. Let's try it one more time. So, yeah, I don't even think I want to try it. I think with my Cad red light, my Cad yellow, white, and French ultramarine blue, which would be my limited palette, I don't think I can make that color. Let me just try it real quick, because I think what the problem is that, say if I start with blue, and I add the red, it goes, it makes a nice brown, but it doesn't make that purpley color. You see orange on the monitor. I see, yeah, kind of an orangish brown. I can make it a darker brown by adding more blue. And that is a known problem with, I want to make a purple, and that is a known problem with Cad red and French ultramarine, is you can't make a good purple with it. So just to see where we're at color-wise. So that is kind of a light purple. I think if I add white, and that's a good, if you can't tell what color you've mixed, throw some white in there and that'll help you determine. And so that's kind of a pink, probably more pink than even orange, but kind of an orangish pink, I guess. Probably more of a reddish pink. But yeah, there's no sense me putting any yellow in here. That's my so that's the only other color that we haven't tried. But if I put yellow over here, since this area is mostly blue, it's going to make it green. And if I add some yellow on this red side, that's going to make it more of an orange. So none of these colors are close to that red. So we're going to give up on that one. But if you've been painting, I don't remember my initial. I don't know. I'm not going to say you need it, but most painters I paint with have alizarin crimson on their palette, or at least in their bag of colors. That's probably one of the first convenience colors that most people get is alizarin crimson. But let's give up on that one and move on. Let's see, maybe the two colors in her neck. We've kind of did, we haven't really done this. These are kind of browns. So why don't we do one? Why don't we pick this darker brown? Yeah, why don't we pick that darker brown and try that one? So that one we kind of already just made. So I know that brown is orange and blue. So this is kind of a mix of all of our colors. So get some blue down there. Get some red down there. Get some yellow down there. And it's lighter, so I know at some point we're going to have to add some white. But let's get that brown going. I guess there's three things that I think about when mixing colors. There's the color, and then there's the saturation. So how intense that color is, and then there's the lightness and the darkness. So I think I've been forgetting to talk about saturation. So this is a brown. It's kind of an orangey brown. So what do you do to desaturate? It's an orangey brown. It's an intense brown. So much more intense than. Let me put a little dollop on there. So much more intense than our target color. So to desaturate a brown, which is kind of an orange in this case, at least where I'm at. So to saturate an orange, you'd use the complementary color, which is a blue. So, and that's how I mentioned before. I've got the main reason I've got, not the main reason, but a reason that I have 3 different blues on my palette is to desaturate oranges and skin tones. So I'm just going to go, since we're going with our limited palette, I'm going to go with French Ultramarine and get some in there. Knowing that this is going to darken up my brown as well as desaturate it, but we already talked about it. I already know that I'm going to have to lighten it up with some white. So that's a browner. It's less orange, it's more brown, but it's darker. So let's get some white in there and see how we're doing. And I think that's going to nail it right there, just that little bit. So let's see how we did. Whoops, still too dark though. So let's get some more white in there. And I slough off a little bit of the white up here because it's kind of hard to tell sometimes how much of a color you have on your brush, especially with my eyesight. So let's wipe that off. Still too dark, still too dark. Yeah, that's pretty good there. Yeah, so I think that's got it. All right. So enough of that. Let's do the dark side of our blush. And then we'll do some eyes. Let's see, we're at about an hour now. All right. So again, I'm going to wipe this off. We'll start from scratch. All right, we'll clean our brush and get a new paper towel. Oh, I guess I've totally quit checking our painting. There'll be time for that. This might be a 2-session day. We're not actually painting today, we're color mixing. This I may post as a color mixing video. So instead of a live stream, I could throw it into CapCut and edit it a little bit and then post it as a video. All right. So we said we're going to do the dark side of her blush. We did the light side of her, well, this is kind of the light side of her blush. Unfortunately, that's all kind of in shadow, but that kind of looks like this color to me. But yeah, let's do this. Actually, yeah, we did this brown. This is just a redder brown. Why don't we skip that? Let's not skip it. Let's just do it. So again, a brown is a blue and an orange. So that to me means that I'm going to use my blue, my red, my yellow. Because we got blue, and then what makes orange is red and yellow. Right? So there's our orange. Can you guys see that as orange? And then we'll mix these two together to make the brown. Kind of like last time, our brown is a little too light or too orangey, so we'll add some more blue. So the first thing we're going to do is match the color. That blue also knocks down the saturation, so I think that color isn't too bad. Actually, it's a little redder, I believe. Let's try that. But it's a little dark, as you can see. So I was kind of talking about it before. So what are a couple ways to lighten that color? So yeah, we could just jump right in with white, but basically you could use any lighter color. So I do have yellow ochre out here. So my reflex would probably be to grab some yellow ochre or some yellow and try it. But I kind of know that that's going to make it more orangey. We can show you that up here. So that makes it more yellowy and orangier. Remember, it's desaturated because it's got all that blue in there. But if it didn't have all that blue, it would be orangey. And then what it kind of did is it made a yellow ochre. So no sense trying the yellow ochre because we just kind of mixed it. Right? The yellow ochre is a little lighter, but to me that's really similar. It just needs to be lightened up a bit. And why don't we test that? Yeah, we really just made yellow ochre. I guess I could go a little yellow and a little lighter, but just with the paint that I had on my brush. So yeah, so no sense or gold or yellow or yellow ochre because that's taking us away from what we want to do. So we're gonna have to do the last resort, which is add a little bit of white. So let's try that. Let me go down here where I don't have any paint. So that looks pretty good to me. So boom, just like that, we made brown. All right, now let's do the eyes. I thought the eyes would be interesting. Let me bring up that image again. Color match. So check this out. So look how this sclera, so here, I'll move this over here. Look how the whites of the eye, the sclera around the eyes, so look how the left side is a green, kind of an olive, like a really light olive. And then how the top part is kind of a, I don't know, mauve, is that the color? But they're certainly not white. Neither one of these are white. And that's always an interesting exercise. Like we all know, I don't know if we all know this, but beginners, we always paint the whites of the eye white. And at least on this dark side of our eye, it's so far from white. And then of course the green of her eye, I wanted to try to color mix too. I thought these would be fun colors to mix. And then what we'll do is we'll end it here. And then maybe tonight or tomorrow we'll put this into practice. But it's been a good lesson for me, especially on these lighter colors. Let's clean this off. So let's see, we've done kind of some reds. This is kind of a yellow. She doesn't really have any yellows. I guess we could have done more with her hair. Maybe we'll do that. Maybe we'll try to color mix this section of her hair, even though I don't have a swatch for it. But let's get rid of this real quick. And then back to our color mixing. Let's have a sip of our coffee. All right. So we're going to let's do this, the left side of her eye, that green there. So what makes green? Yellow and blue. So let's start with that. It's my dog. She's looking out the door and watching other dogs walk around the neighborhood. This is a little dark. Let's see. There we go. It's a little better. I'm sitting right next to an open window, but it's so dark here in the Bay Area right now that natural light is not helping at all. I'm literally sitting next to an open window with just probably one layer of diffusion, basically kind of a window dressing or a curtain. It's literally a white sheer curtain, but anyways. So we've got a green, but obviously way too dark. So again, let's try some, just to experiment. So the lighter colors that I have at my disposal, red, you don't want to mix red with green because that'll gray it down. And I think because red is a complementary color, I think we've got the right color and possibly the right saturation, but we need to lighten it up. I don't want to use yellow either. I don't think I want to use yellow. I've got some yellow on my brush, so let's just try it. I think that just makes it a lighter green. Why don't we leave that on here just for giggles? I think that makes it a little too light and a little too saturated with that yellow. We basically put the saturation back into the green by adding yellow. We don't want to do that. So let's get that yellow off our brush and then see what white does. So take some white. So that's too much white. So what did we do here? So that's made it kind of a bluer color. So let's put that white in the saturated green and see what that does. I may have guessed wrong here. So that's actually closer, right? But maybe a little too saturated. Let's throw that up there. So yeah, that's closer, but a little too saturated. So what do we do to knock down the saturation in green? We add red. So I totally guessed wrong. This color here was actually less close or farther away from what we wanted than the saturated green. But now we just need to desaturate that a little bit. And so we desaturate it with red. So this red is super powerful. So get just a little bit on your brush. So that's even after wiping it down. That's how powerful that red is. Let's see now. So pretty close, just a little bit light. I mean, a little bit dark. So let's lighten it up. close, but maybe a little too light. So our only options for darkening it back up, we don't want to do yellow because that's not really darkening it. So our only option really is blue. So let's get just a little bit of that. Yeah, let me wipe this off. And voila, that did it. All right. So the green of her eye, so that's actually crazy enough. That is the color, the white of her eye is that weird green color, that light olive color. Very interesting. Okay. Let's do that dark green. So again, we'll start from scratch. So this is the color of her eyes, is this green right here. Another thing that I should say too, like if you do these colors, like if you only paint, we want to blend colors and do, you know, there are going to be gradients of these colors in these areas. But these are just, I try to get basically an average of that area. But if you were to just use, paint her iris this color green, it would look like a stamp, right? If you were to paint this whole area of her face this color, it would look like a stamp or like a color by numbers or paint by numbers. These are just, and that's kind of why I don't start from scratch every time I mix a color. I mix colors based off of previous colors so that you get the gradients, right? So don't do that. Don't paint her whole lip this color, you know, on the dark side. It's a mix of this color, you know, and maybe something else, right? So through here, this is kind of orangey, right? But these are the base colors for these areas. So let me let me be clear about that. And then these colors move around, right? So like this red of her nose, you know, that's this color here. So, right, we could use these colors in other places. Now that you have it in front of you and you've gone through the trouble of making these swatches, it's easy to see that this is just that. But yeah, don't make her whole iris this color. You know, it's a mix of this color, and then, you know, the outer edges of it are quite a bit darker, you know, almost towards a blue-black. But I don't know. Just to get that clear. Something else we didn't do is her eyebrows, you know, but you can see her eyebrows are kind of close to this, probably a darker version of this blush, you know, the shady side of her blush. You know, and that's why I have mother colors, right? So I'll have kind of a dark, I'll have my dark, some other pile of darks, and then I'll have, you know, from that I'll build my flesh tones off of that, so that it'll be a gradient of all these colors, and then I'll have another pile for her lips, you know, kind of a reddish pile. I'll have another pile for like the colors in her hair, and then, you know, one obviously for her base skin tone. But let's do that green like I keep saying and not doing. So yes, I know I have green right here, but again, we're going to start from scratch. So we're only using 3 colors again, 3 colors in white. So green, what makes green? Blue and yellow. So let's grab some yellow. And I must have really cleaned my brush good that time, because that green is really saturated, right? So I'm going to ask myself, and I should have said this earlier, is I always ask myself, what does it need to be? Does it need to be more yellow? No, it's actually a little too yellow. Does it need to be more red? I don't know. I think red obviously would desaturate it. But let's hold off on desaturating. Let's try to get the color first. Or does it need to be more blue? And I think, yes, it does need to be more blue. It's a little too yellow. And then to darken that up and desaturate it a little bit, I would add some more blue. So let's do that. So again, and this is Mark Carter from Draw Mix Paint. That's where I learned the whole, ask yourself, does it need to be redder, bluer, or more yellow? What does it need to get closer to the color that you want? So adding blue definitely got us closer. So let's just test real quick. So interesting enough, this pile is lighter than her eyes. So what do we do to make it darker? We don't have many options, right? We've got yellow, red, and blue. So yellow value-wise isn't really darker. It's quite a bit lighter. Red, I think, is kind of almost the same value, maybe a little bit lighter. So the only option that we have to make it darker is blue. So let's get some more blue in there. All right. So now we've added blue, and it's getting closer. Yeah, it's kind of weird. The reflection is kind of weird. Let me wipe off what I have here. So I'm ruining the photograph too, by the way. But so that's a little bit too dark, I think. But as I'm looking at it, I'm like, it's a little too dark and a little too saturated, but the color is about right. So I think we got the color right. It's just a little too dark. So what's our next step? So next step would be saturation. So right, you get the color, you get the saturation, and then you get the lightness or the darkness. So to go lighter, if I add yellow, that's going to change the color, right? Probably more than I want. And so my other option is white. So let's just get a little dab of white. And this white will do two things. It'll desaturate it just a little bit, and then of course it'll lighten it. All right, so let's try that. Let me get a new spot here. So that I went too light. And that is a complaint about titanium white, is it is powerful. So let's grab a little bit of this light mixture. Instead of dipping back into that titanium white, let's dip into this light mixture and then just mix it more into the colors that we have already mixed. I'll avoid that saturated part of the color. So let's try that. Wipe this off. This one ended up being one of the more challenging ones. So that's too light. So let's get some red in there. Because at this point the red is darker. And I think that's done it. It might still be too light. Yeah, I'm seeing two different versions of it. It kind of reflects a lot lighter, and it seems to be drying really fast in this area. Let's just try, just to double check, we could try a little blue over here. But I think I know what that's going to do. I want to wipe off this section too. Keep getting tempted to use it. Yeah, I think that blue fixed it up. It kind of, that white kind of makes it kind of chalky around the outside when it dries. But while it's wet, the blue is what fixed it. So you only got 3 colors to choose from in white, so experiment a little bit. Like I was obviously wrong about that one. So yeah, so that's the green of our eyes. I don't think we need to do that. We've kind of played around with some of this kind of purplish color, purplish pink over in here. That's very similar to what's on her neck. So I think that's pretty much it. I guess now the exercise for me is to go in and actually create these piles. And we'll do that maybe tonight. All right, folks, I think that's going to end it. Why don't I'll clean up a little bit. And while I'm cleaning up, I'll let this run. And if anything jumps into my head, I'll call it out. So tomorrow night, since I have the week off, I'm going to go paint with Bill Sarnoff's group up in Palo Alto. I want to see who they have for a model first, though. But regardless of the model, I might go anyways. It's good practice for me to paint from live models. It's good practice for all of us. And then I scheduled, since I know I'm going to be in town, it's kind of a bummer. I canceled a photo shoot. But because I was thinking about leaving town. But I ended up staying in town. So what I did is for Thanksgiving morning, I scheduled a Thanksgiving plein air event at a local park. Where did I schedule it? Where are we painting at? It's in Los Gatos. I can't think of the name of it right now, but I scheduled an event for Thursday morning. So that'll be fun. I saw there's already a handful of people RSVP'd for that. So that should be fun. And then we'll see from there. Of course, I got some Thanksgiving stuff to do as well since I'm in town. But I guess we'll end it here, and I'll see you at the next session. Maybe later today we'll paint a little more on our painting. But this was a fun exercise. I think valuable too. Hopefully it taught you all some lessons about color mixing, or at least how I do it. All right, see you next time.